The Nebraska Cornhuskers, one of the most storied college football programs in the history of the sport, 5 national titles, top 10 in win percentage, and man have they had their share of ups and downs the past 30 years. But after a team that had done it all, fell off a cliff, gone through the mud, it finally seems like they have the head coach that's going to put them back on the map, and that's Matt Rhule. Ladies and gentlemen, the Nebraska Cornhuskers are back. Let's just talk about what this team has gone through the past decade. In 2017, they hired Scott Frost. It seemed like he was going to be the perfect hire at Nebraska. He had the legendary playing career with Tom Osborne. He won national titles. He turned around a UCF team that was 0-12 in his first season to a 13-0 college football playoff contender. Everyone in college football knew that this was the perfect hire, and this was how the movie started. But little did they know this would be one of the worst hires in Nebraska coaching history. And he was absolutely atrocious as a head coach. Under Frost, Nebraska went 16-31. They had 23 losses by single digits. Everyone in the darn program transferred out because of him. J.D. Spielman and Wandale Robinson, 2 great wide receivers in the program, ended up leaving. Quarterback Adrian Martinez, who did practically everything for this team and quite frankly made them look better than they actually were, also hit the transfer portal. And this Scott Frost era in Nebraska was defined by close losses, passing the blame, and flat out being soft. Now, last season, the Cornhuskers started 1-2. They lost to a very poor Georgia Southern team, and that was it for Cornhuskers fans in this program. Frost was fired, and Mickey Joseph was named the interim head coach. All of the players rallied around him, and they were really able to turn their season around. They ended up blowing out their biggest rival, Iowa, in the last game of the season, and a lot of people thought that he would be the head coach moving forward, but after being involved in some legal troubles this offseason, he was no longer in the running for this head coaching candidacy, and that was when Matt Rhule swooped in and was hired to be the next head coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, there's a ton of pressure taking this job. Nebraska has one of the most die-hard fan bases in all of sports, and they've been dying for somebody to turn this program around since the 90s. Now, Rhule had just been fired by the Carolina Panthers after having a few terrible seasons there, so there were definitely some concerns about how he would do now that he was back in college football. And Rhule had some great success and was known for turning college football programs around. In 2013, he was hired by Temple University, and in his first season, they went 2-10, but 3 short seasons later, he turned this team around to a 10-3 ball club. He then leveled up and was hired by Baylor to try and turn around this school, a team that had no hope since they lost RG3. In his first year with the program, they went 1-11, and 2 seasons later, they were 11-3 and made the Sugar Bowl. And at one point, they were ranked 8th in the country. Well, now he's back to save another college football program, and this time it's the highest stakes of all. Looking at it from the outside in, only 9 games into the season, he's 5-4, and he's put Nebraska in a position to win one more bowl game to become bowl eligible for the first time since 2016. Now, a lot of Nebraska fans wanted to see this success from Rhule, but I don't think anybody expected it this early on. With the transition of coaches, the new staff, players leaving in the portal, he has done an amazing job through only 9 games of the season. The biggest thing that he's added in this Nebraska locker room is accountability. He never blames his players, he never blames his coordinators like the last head coach did. And he said right when he was hired, he's going to preface this team on playing great defense, being physical in the trenches, and running the ball at an elite level. So far, this defense has been one of the best in all of college football. They're allowing the 16th fewest rushing yards per game. They're giving up less than 19 points per game, which ranks the 22nd best in all of college football. And in the trenches, like Rhule talked about, they're giving up the 4th fewest rushing yards per game. This defense has been absolutely unbelievable, and Nebraska hasn't had this type of defensive identity in the last decade. If you turn on your TV and watch this defense, they play inspired, they fly to the football, players are putting their body on the line, and these dudes are playing for one another. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, it's been disgusting. With this new transition of players coming into this season, they were able to pull out former Georgia Tech quarterback Jeff Sims in the transfer portal. There was a lot of excitement around him as he was an inconsistent passer, but a dynamic runner who had a big arm, and if he could clean up the turnover problems, he would really help this Nebraska offense. But through the first 2 weeks of the season, Sims had 6 turnovers that proved to be very costly in their 0-2 start, and they're very close to defeat week 1 against Minnesota on the road. He had a very costly fumble, interception in the red zone, but Rhule didn't have a short leash with him, and he started in their week 2 game against Colorado. Sims had 3 first half turnovers, and it led to Nebraska getting blown out. This is when everything started to spiral out of control for Nebraska offensively, and the job that Rhule did to calm everything down, put a good enough offense on the field to help them win ball games, has been very impressive. Let's just talk about the unreal string of injuries that they've had. They've lost 3 starting wide receivers, 3 starting offensive linemen. The transfer quarterback that they thought would be great for this team has been horrendous. And a position that Nebraska had been very strong in the past few seasons, their quarterback room is significantly depleted. So looking at this Nebraska team from the outside in, for a first-year head coach with an unreal amount of injuries, players leaving in the portal, the fact that he has this team 1 win away from bowling season is unreal. Not to sound crazy here, but Nebraska could potentially win the Big Ten West and play in the Big Ten Conference Championship. Now you look at this Big Ten Conference, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, the 3 juggernauts who've dominated this conference the past decade, are all in the East Division, so only one of those teams will play in the conference championship. Now in the West, Iowa is currently at the top with a 4-2 record in the Big Ten. Nebraska, Minnesota, and Wisconsin are all 3-3 in the conference and are right there to potentially sneak into the Big Ten championship. But here's why Nebraska has the greatest edge out of all of them. 2 out of their last 3 games they have at home. This week they play a good Maryland squad at home that is a must-win for them. Then the week after that, they'll go on the road at Wisconsin, which is another very big game, but Wisconsin hasn't been great this season. This will be a very low-scoring affair, but Nebraska could definitely squeak out this win here. And then they play Iowa in the last week of the season, and anything could happen here. They're each other's biggest rivals. Nebraska beat them last year on the road. Both of them have very stout defenses, good rushing attacks. So if Nebraska can win 2 out of the next 3 games, they can definitely win the Big Ten West and potentially play in the Big Ten Championship. I know it sounds crazy, but it's absolutely realistic at this point. I want to wrap up this video by not only complimenting Matt Rhule on the amazing job that he's done in his first year at this program. He has all eyes on him. He has all the pressure in the world on him, and he's handled this phenomenally so far. I think Nebraska has found their future head coach, and he will get them back to the promised land one day. I'm Caden Kubler, and that's my take.